You might be asking why I'm wearing this thirst trap. I mean, uniform. No, but seriously, I'm not going to actually talk about my military service as much as I want to talk about the experiences and the people along the way that sort of made me successful in that career, and then, afterward. So, who am I? Who is, I saw like an online friends over there laughing. So my kids are in the back doing their thing. It doesn't matter. They're doing their life. So that's what it is. So, so who am I? I saw a thing that said, who is Paul Cruz, or one of the tags was like, who is Paul R. Cruz? I guess when somebody asks me where you're from, that's a loaded question, because like where you were born, where you grew up. And so initial thought, first thing I'll say is New York. I was born in Manhattan, and I lived until I was about 12 years old. I lived in the Bronx, South Bronx, in the Soundview neighborhood, across from I was a Story and Fratelli, Story Avenue, and across from the 42nd precinct, which, just as a side note, the sound of like sirens, police sirens and ambulances, and there was also a fire station there. Like that actually is like somewhat comforting, because it reminds me, I guess, of my childhood, interestingly. So yeah, we left New York when I was, I went to Catholic school in New York, and not because we didn't have money. What it was that my dad owned a construction company, and he helped build a library for the Catholic school, and so that was kind of like tuition. So my dad had his own business in New York, and oddly enough, at some other time I'll tell stories, my dad had contract issues with the man himself, Donald J. Trump. So we left New York in 1995, I believe, or 95 or 96, and we moved to Lakeland, Florida. Dramatic change from New York City and from just any bigger town. Like Lakeland, especially at that time, was much smaller. And the downtown part of Lakeland, we were here for, I don't know how many, 2 years, 3 years, we never even knew that was there. It's very different. But Lakeland was a big culture shock. Growing up in the north and versus the south, there was a lot of culture shock. But ultimately, after living, I attended elementary school and the first year of middle school here in Lakeland, Florida. Then we moved to Miami. And in between, we were in Broward County for 2-3 months. But Miami is ultimately where I spent my formative years. It's also actually where I met my wife. I met my wife in high school. And we didn't date in high school though. I had a crush on her since we met in 9th grade in summer school, and she doesn't remember that, but she only really remembers me from senior year. But that's because I was a very different person than I am now, which is sort of why I wanted to get to that. When I was a kid, I was much more shy. I was I guess you could say if you wanted to give an extreme example, I was kind of like a bubble boy. My mom was kind of tried to protect me from the world, and something changed, when I was around in high school. There was always, I always tried to step out. I always just tried to be different, but there was always that should you, there's always battling with it. There was insecurity. And when I was in high school, there's a moment where just before we graduated, this is after September 11th. So I remember that was sort of one of the changes. I remember before, even after September 11th, I was still very, because of what happened being from New York, but also just being an American, there was a sense of patriotism. But I wouldn't have joined the military. I was very much anti-war. I didn't believe in joining the military. I didn't believe in owning a gun. I was a very different personality. And I wanted to make movies. I wanted to pursue film. I wanted to write. I wanted to. I was hoping to be one day on SNL. So I wanted to be on what do you call that? Weekend Update. That was my dream. To write for SNL and to be on Weekend Update and do that. My mom, I would stay up really late with my mom, and we'd watch SNL on Saturday nights and that, or even Mad TV back in the day. And so that's what I wanted to do. And my dad wanted me to be a lawyer, and so he pushed that. But I have to admit that when I did mention to my dad that I didn't want to do that, he he bought me books on acting and like told me that if I was going to do it all the way. And so he was supportive in that way. Like he didn't want me to do that, but if I was going to do it, he was like, at least do it, you know. And so I think it was right around close to getting to graduation, or I don't remember if it was senior year, if it was junior. Point is, there was a party in my neighborhood, and there was a lot of people there. And me and my cousin were riding our bikes through this neighborhood, and when the party got broken up, a bunch of people passed through. And in our neighborhood, there was like it was a kind of gated-in community in South Miami in an area called Gould's. It's a rough neighborhood. It's a rough neighborhood, but it's called Princeton now. But I don't think it's that bad anymore. But back in the day, Gould's was pretty bad. South Miami is pretty rough. And so having a fence didn't matter. There was holes in the fence, and so there was a hole in the fence right near like somewhere where our house was, because our house was like towards the back of the community. So police raided the clubhouse, which was in the front of the community. So people didn't run out the front; they went out the back, and they went to go out this hole. And me and my cousin happened to be like, I mean, we were in my driveway. We ran home. We were like, hey, we had a bad feeling. We raced home. Actually, we had to stop because he wanted to talk to this girl. I'm not even. If she sees. So the camera died in the middle of. The battery died in the camera in the middle of me talking. So where did I leave off? I had already talked about, I guess, joining the Army. So like, I think it was around 9/11. Oh, the fence. Okay, so yes, I remember. So my cousin and I were riding our bikes, and he wanted to stop, and he wanted to talk to this girl that I went to school with, and I was like, man, I really didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to stop. And when we did, we were talking, that's when we saw the commotion, and I was like, let's get out of here. We ended up riding back to the house, and just before we got to the house, I was like, literally, we were like in our driveway, or my driveway, and somebody yelled. There was so many people. I mean, like, it was a flood of people. It was at least 50-something. There was more than 100 people like running through the back to get to the hole, but like, there was all of a sudden, I turn around, I hear it was crazy, because I mean, if I'm gonna be, they said, give me your bike. It was a little more eloquent than that, but they said, give me your bike. And I turned, and I was like, I saw like these like 50 guys, man. And I just said, come and take it. And my cousin was like, bro, what are you doing? And I was like, I live here. Like, I didn't have a chance to say that, but I live in this neighborhood. And like, you have to stand up for yourself, man. And so like, if I would have bowed down, that would have been it for me. Well, so one guy runs up to like fake hit me, and me being stubborn, I put my chin out, and he didn't hit me. He just faked, and then they started walking off. And as soon as I turn around, I hear like footsteps rushing towards us. And next thing you know, I'm getting hit from all angles. So I start throwing punches, and before I know it, I'm getting hit from them. I'm getting punched. I'm getting like, and I drop the bike, and I'm trying to fight, but I'm getting hit from all angles. There's too many people, and I look over and I see that my cousin, like he was like, screw it, he didn't fight. He just dropped down to protect himself, like he called, which is what I should have done, but I didn't. I was being stubborn. He dropped down, covered his head up, protected himself, and I just kept trying to throw punches until eventually I got knocked down, and I fell on top of the bike, and then they started stomping me in the face and kicking me, and whereas my cousin was, bent over, like balled up, like I was like completely open, vulnerable, and so my face was broken, and that's why if you look, I have like some facial tics, and I have scars, and you can actually, I don't want to do that here on the camera, but you can still see like stuff in the bone here and then scar, but and even my nose, you can see where it was reconstructed, but I'll get there. My nose was completely shattered. My face looked completely different. I was severely beaten, but I remember that was like sort of a turning point in my life. There's like, 50 people stomping you, bleeding everywhere. Like I was wearing a white T-shirt, and when it was all done, it was brown and red, covered in boot prints. I'll never forget an old pair of. I don't think that company exists anymore. Buffalino boots. I'll never forget that Buffalino symbol being imprinted on that. But my cousin had just gotten his hair braided, and so he was upset that his braids were messed up. My nose was broken and would whistle whenever I would breathe out of it. But what happened was that I thought we were probably going to die in that moment. And I remember screaming out, that you better kill me, because if I get up, I'm taking somebody with me. And then the cops, I heard a police siren. Police siren went off, everybody scattered, everybody went for the fence, and I saw the bikes, and I was like, I'm gonna get my bike. And I remember I ran after this really fat dude who had my cousin's bike, and he had like giant rolls in the back of his head. And I just remember I just jumped up and punched him in the back of the roll, and he dropped the bike. And I grabbed the bike and I threw it towards Daniel, and I said, take it. I said, that's your bike, I'm gonna go get mine. And then I remember looking and seeing the guy, the other dude was much faster, and he wasn't fat. And he was already on his way out the fence. And Danny was looking at me like, if you go through that fence, you're dead. And he just yelled, the cop, tell the cop. And I was like, I can go get my bike, or I can talk to him. I said, all right, man. So we go over to the police officer. And mind you, we haven't seen what we look like at this point. So I go over to the police officer. I'll never forget what she looked like. She was very young, blonde, and she was visibly nervous. She asked us a question about like whether or not we were in a gang. And I was like, what? She implying that it was some sort of initiation. And she asked us if we had receipts for the bikes. I was like, receipts? Yeah, actually, my dad is a pack rat, so he actually does have the receipts. So she goes, okay, rolls up the window and drives off and says, and at that moment, that's when I see my face and the blood and everything and how my nose was shattered. And when I realized that she drove off, she didn't take any of our information. And so at the moment, I didn't realize that that happened later. What I was concerned with when I saw my face was trying to cover this up so that my mom didn't see this. I don't know what we were thinking. She was going to see, like I was going to have to go to the hospital, obviously. And we ran right into the house and ran into the bathroom, and we were trying to clean ourselves up. And I remember my mom was like, hurry up, get out. And then when we opened the door, I remember her screaming, and I'll never forget that wail. And my dad went and grabbed a crowbar and hopped in the car and started driving around. We were like, no, trying to get him to calm down. And then he called the police, and then we found out that there was no police report. So long story short, I had my surgery was paid for by the Miami-Dade Police Department because for various reasons, I'm sure you can surmise. And that event sort of changed me. Like, I realized in that moment that, like, life's gonna happen to you. And so I was like, I'm not gonna just take whatever life throws at me. I'm not gonna just lay down. Like, if I'm gonna face death, I'm not gonna do it on my knees. And so I think that was the change. That was the moment that all of a sudden I became a different person. And then I was like, I wanted to join the military. And when I tried, honestly, the first time didn't succeed. I had flat feet and I had asthma. And so they did not take me. And thankfully, initially I tried to join the Marine Corps. And for the Marine Corps, you don't guarantee a place in like your job. It needs the Corps. So like, if the Corps needs cooks and you have the best scores or whatever, and you could be a cybersecurity guy, you're gonna be a cook. Anyway, so I ended up graduating high school. I eventually got the surgery, and my face looks a little different now because of that. So there's that. And then when I was working at a Hollywood video, actually the story's funny because I applied for the wrong position because I told you I wanted to make movies, and so I applied for when the application had the word director on it. I didn't know I was applying for the management position, so I ended up getting hired as the assistant manager because when they asked me if they were like, "You're so young. Did you mean?" I smoked the interview, and they were like, "Did you mean to apply for this?" And I looked them dead in the eyes and I said, "Yes, yes, I did." And then I became the assistant manager at that job, and. Then eventually I became the manager, but they didn't give me the manager pay. And I was like, I've got all the responsibility, but because there was somebody who was stealing. Anyway, that was getting rough. I was going to college and I was working at the same time, and I was helping my parents. We only had one car, and there was things going on at home. And all of a sudden, Iraq was getting bad. Iraq war kicked off, and Iraq was getting bad. And this is in 2004. And so they changed. They had a bunch of waivers, and they called me up and said, "Hey, do you still want to go to the Army?" I said, "Absolutely." So when do I leave? 2 weeks later, I was gone, and I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And after basic training, I was an intelligence analyst, so I went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where there's Intel school, and then I went to Germany. I got stationed in Germany for 3 years, where I deployed to Kosovo, and I spent some time in Bosnia, Romania. I had amazing experiences there. I'll tell some more stories about that. But then there was, then I went to Hawaii. I got to Hawaii literally, I think it was like 30 days later or like 60 days later, I was in Iraq. I got the 25th ID, I was gone. I was like, oh man, that's crazy. And then, so then I got back to Hawaii and I spent the remainder of time there. But what led me to a lot of those things in life, not just that event, like I wanted to highlight that and just try to give my history, but also like the people in my life. Like nobody's perfect. I had great parents. Like my parents weren't given the best circumstances, and they did the best they could with what they had, and I'm grateful for that. I was raised in the household with my sister and also my great-grandparents. My mother was raised by her grandparents, and so when they got older, she took them in, and so I was raised in that same household. They were my godparents, and so like I had, you know, my mom and my dad worked, but then I had my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather in my house, and then they passed away when they were in like late 90s, so like 99 and 96 or something like that, and I was about 15 or 16, and so the impact that they had on my life is significant. My grandfather was one of the first people to become an American citizen. Like he was born in Puerto Rico, and then when the Jones Act, he became an American citizen, and then they all decided to go to New York. So he decided that he was going to bootleg moonshine and learn construction. I guess I found out years later that he was actually came from a wealthy family and rejected that, and then wanted to be with my great-grandmother, who wasn't, she was like considered like an Indian, and so she was dark-skinned, black hair, and like they wanted her to walk into the service entrance, and he said he rejected that and rejected his family for love. And it's a great story. I was like, didn't know any of that until many, many, many years later. But he basically made pitorro, which is Puerto Rican moonshine, and then worked and helped build the roads that would eventually become the first highways in Puerto Rico, and saved up his money and brought all of her family and then their kids to New York. And he had an apartment, put bunk beds in it, and then gave these people like, okay, you got 3 months, get a job, save everything you can, and then get out. And then, you know, the whole family migrated to Puerto Rico, and we squatted up there, or to the Bronx. And so I was raised, my whole family was like really, really close. And then, you know, when those people passed, when my great-grandparents passed, it was different. Some people were in Florida, some people were in New York, and it's just been different. And then, as you know, like with 20 years of warfare and then all the things that are happening now, it's been difficult to maintain relationships. It's been difficult to even survive for some people. And so I know what that's like firsthand, growing up in, you know, rough neighborhoods in New York and in Florida. And then being overseas and seeing what it's like in war zones in Iraq, in Romania, Kosovo, Serbia. Like it gives you perspective, and I'm really, really grateful for my tenure, for my service. The last 6 months of my active duty experience, like I was assigned to like funeral details, and we had folks that were passing away in Afghanistan, and one of my friends that I was stationed with him in Germany. I won't stay too long on this story because I want to dedicate a whole story to this, and it's I'm dedicating a significant, if not multiple chapters to this story. A friend of mine passed away, and we were about the same age, same rank. We were both in Germany together. We were both in Hawaii together. We were both in Iraq together. And when he went to Afghanistan, he got shot in the leg. Staff Sergeant Nigel Kelly. And unfortunately, the helicopter that was the medical evacuation, the helicopter was shot at, and they had to do on-site repairs, and those repairs cost them too much time, and he, unfortunately, there was just enough time for him to bleed out, so he didn't make it. I was tasked with escorting his body from Dover in Delaware to Arlington National Cemetery. Hey, Eli, it's okay. And then into Arlington National Cemetery, and the experience was actually one of the most profound in my life. I consider it a great honor to have done that. But at his like viewing or whatever have you, which by the way, I think his grandfather comes over to me and says, have you ever thought about writing down the story of like your life or whatever? And I was like, nobody wants to hear that. He said, I said that to my grandson, and he said something similar, and he said, I do. and I'll never get the chance. So I suggest you write yours down. So like, I didn't get to tell him, but I made a promise to myself that like, not only would I tell my story, but that I would also include the story that I just told you and much more about my friend, and including a really funny situation involving like his wife. We had met, again, we were stationed together in Iraq. So like, at the funeral, we're having events, and so a bunch of us go out to dinner after the viewing or something. And she's telling this story. Now, I'll come back to the story in a second, because when I was in Iraq, there was this, we were receiving indirect fire, and we didn't know where it was coming from. It was the middle of the night. And so we hear the explosion, and me and my NCO, we start running. And I noticed there's like a cord. It's like some of the buildings we used to like run like internet wire, like the cords would literally be running from one building to the next. And so as we were running, I see it, right? And my sergeant's in front of me, and he doesn't see it. He gets choked right in the neck, and he gets clotheslined. Boom, he's on the ground. I dodge it, look back, and like as I'm looking at him on the ground, I end up running knee first into this concrete barrier. Boom, flip right over it. Next thing you know, he's above me, and he's laughing at me. I'm like, oh my God. So I go to like, I bashed my knee pretty bad, so I end up going to like the clinic or whatever, and I explained to the nurse, and she's laughing at me and making fun of me. So then I'm here at this table, and I'm meeting with these people, and I hear this girl telling the story, and it's the same exact story, but from the perspective of the nurse. This is the nurse. I had no idea this was the same person, and we end up running into each other, and she was like, yeah, this idiot fell over the damn concrete barrier. It was great, and we all had a laugh, and it just, it bonded us even closer. But the important thing about that is that anything that you do, like in life, I think it's the relationships that we build. People don't leave jobs because they don't like the work. Work is always going to be work. They leave a job if the environment's not good, if the people, whether it's the management or whether the people they work with, if the environment's not healthy for them. That's what people leave. Even if, like, I was in the military, trust me, even if the pay's not worth it, people will stay for that sense of community. Like, that's what we're forgetting about. Like, we're maximizing profits, but at the expense of the individual, of the worker, of the actual consumer, of the people who matter. These are the people that buy the things, that make the things. These are the people that, it's all centered around them, and it's commodified in a strange way. But that's, I digress. The point that I was making with all that is like, I'm shaped by the people that have told those stories. And so around that time, interestingly enough, I was married before I got divorced. And that the reason I tell that is because I mentioned earlier that I met my wife in high school, but I had a crush on her. And I remember, like, as a matter of fact, I'll rewind a little bit. And for graduation, I remember, like, that was like my, I'm gonna sound corny right now, but like, if you've ever seen like a Goofy movie, like, or any, romantic comedy or like teen comedy where the guy's got to tell the girl or whatever have you. Like, I was like, man, I've just got to tell her. And a friend of mine told me, don't do it. She's got a boyfriend there. I was like, I'm not even there to like mess anything up. I just want to let her know that I felt that way, because and when I was just about to go say it, like at our graduation day, and I was running over there, somebody said, take a picture of you real quick. And when I did, she was gone. And so like, it left this like damn, I always wondered what she was up to. Anyway, I got married and got divorced. And she ended up doing the same. And it was my 10-year high school reunion was coming up. And I was at some training at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, our Army Reserve training. And I couldn't make it. But I had these old videotapes of me and my friends in high school goofing off. And it turns out she was in one of those tapes. So I sent it to some friends. I put some music on it because teenagers are gross. And it ended up getting to her. She ended up reaching out to me on Facebook, and I tried to ask her out, and she initially told me no. And so I was like, hey, why don't I just go to Miami and say hi to you? And she was like, well, I'm actually not going to live here. I'm moving. And I was like, okay, well, try me. Where are you moving to? She said, you've never heard of it. I was like, try me. She says, Lakeland. I said, my parents live in Lakeland. She said, no, I don't. I said, no, seriously. She goes, no, my parents live in Lakeland. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go fly to Florida. I'm gonna go visit my family, and I'm gonna go eat at this restaurant called Harry's in downtown Lakeland. And if you come, cool. If not, no harm, no foul. She showed up, and like 6 months later, I think we were married. There's a lot more to it than that. I'll tell more stories, but like, this is the love of my life, man. And now we've got 3 kids, a pit bull, and we have one inside cat, one outside cat. What are we getting next? A fish? A lizard? Anyway, I'm really grateful. Like, that's the thing that gets me the most. Like, I wanted to talk about my family. Like, I'm so proud of my sons. As a parent, I think I've learned more from them than the other way around, and I do my best to try to just be a part of that. But they really are the reason for everything. I hear a lot of people say, I'm doing this for the kids, and this is true. But for me, it's also personal. I'm doing it for my kids as well. And I don't trust that the people up there are there. They don't understand what they don't understand. And there's a lot of things that are going on that at these levels that even if they did understand, I don't think they're capable of fighting that fight, but I am. And so that's what this is all about. And it's the people that have taught me throughout my life, led all the way up. Like when I was talking about my great-grandfather, that's one of my greatest inspirations. Every generation in my family has, fun fact, Puerto Ricans serve in the military more than any other, like, I guess, minority group or demographic, whatever. But every generation of my family has served in one branch or another. And Vietnam, Korean War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and it's global war on terror, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's fascinating. I've learned a lot about like ancestry. I don't know, a lot of people don't know that what Puerto Ricans are. They think they're actually a combination of like everybody's the same, but the blood of typically of 3 continents. You're talking about African blood, you're talking about European blood, and then like Native American and American Indian, or Native American blood, indigenous, Taino, and others. And so it's very fascinating because, like, and I'll tell the story, I guess I'll just drop this tidbit. No, you know what? I'll save that for another time. So teaser. I got to talk about my ancestry. There's some really fun stuff involving ancestry and some quirkiness. But yeah, I just wanted to have that introduction and talk about like how important my parents were to my upbringing, my great-grandparents, having responsibility at a young age, taking care of my sister, and being in the military, having responsibility on getting promoted. I retired as a sergeant first class, but I was on my way. I would have been to Master Sergeant School and then eventually Sergeant Major's course, if I would have not went Chief Warrant Officer. But I probably would have went Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Cruz sounds amazing. Yep, what else? Yeah, so that's just that part, the professional aspect of it. Like my wife is my best friend. She's been helping me with everything. She's a strong person, and that's what I value. I value that she's gonna always tell me straight. She's never gonna sugarcoat it. She's gonna always tell me the truth, no matter how difficult it might be to hear. And I love that. And she's intense, man. I love it. And then each one of my kids, they're just so different. Like Eli's way cooler than I ever was at that age. And like Ren, my son tells me he doesn't want to play video games. He wants to make them, and so he's learning the code. He's 6. And then Kai is like my rowdiest child. My 3-year-old is just a tank, man. And then we've got the new addition to the family, which is Titan. He stole my heart and rescued him. He's wonderful. I take him everywhere I go. I've been sleeping on the couch for the past week because he's so tied to me. But it's cute. I love him. He's gonna be huge. And then there's Evie. Evie was also a rescue, and we got her to. We found a rescue at. I used to work at Universal Studios, and like as a venture, and I worked the operations. And while we were there, we found a cat on Dr. Seuss land, so I named it Seuss, which was just fitting. And so we wanted a companion for her, and so we got Evie, and she was also named, Evie we call her for short, but her name was Everest because it was a theme park, I guess, motif, I should say, I don't know, that was the thing. And so, yeah, Seuss is basically for the streets, so she's around here somewhere. And Evie's here in the house with Titan, and we're getting him acclimated and trained. And like, I'm probably gonna post some videos with the training of the dog because I think it's important. I think I want to post videos that like, especially young men can see like, how hard it is. Like I know there's a lot of dudes out there who take advantage of young men, like to sell like self-help crap that doesn't work, or tell them how to get girls and it's all BS, man. And I want to actually have conversations, stuff that I would leave for my sons, the same advice that I would give to them and post these things. Again, my social media game has never been that great because I've actually spent a lot of time with my family, but I'm working on it now that I've got so much support and outpouring of help. Like, this is the second video that I've recorded, so I need to post it up because like there's so many people that have asked stuff, and I'm so grateful, and tremendous response, and I'm so grateful. Thank you to everybody for helping, and again, I'll be in touch with other stuff, and so that's that part of the story. Next time I will tell, I don't know, next time I'll talk about something else. I mean, it's my professional career outside of the military. But I'm very grateful for the people and the experiences that I've had up to this point. And I think that all of those experiences are exactly what prepare me for leadership. Even the mistakes, you learn from them and you learn not to make them again. So I'm very grateful for all of you spending your time here and listening to me, because I could probably talk forever. But again, thank you very much. It still hasn't hit that, like, every time I check my TikTok, it's like 200 more people are following, or somebody's sharing, and somebody's like saying how much, you know, they felt it resonated with them. None of that was expected at all. I thought that video was gonna get like 14 views, man. Well, thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.